guys, welcome back to Kissing Strangers. I'm your host Zora. I'm here with my co-host
Olivia.
So before we get into today's topic, we're gonna be doing some brief introductions. So like I said, my name is Zora. My pronouns are she, her. I am a Cancer with 5 Cancer placements on my charts. Yes, I know. Please don't say a thing. And my current obsession is watching New Girl, specifically season 2, just for Jess and Nick. So yeah, I'm gonna hand it over to Liv.
You're so real for that. Okay, so I'm Olivia, the co-host. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a December Capricorn. That's a very important distinction. And my current obsession is convincing someone to come with me to the Motley Crue World Tour concert in August. Okay, and today we're going to be talking to you about how to start conversations when becoming sexually active.
So before we get into today's topic, though, I want to do a little brief introduction into.
Did we do that?
No, like the FCP.
Oh!
We have to restart this.
No, we don't. Just keep going. It's good to be raw. It's good to be raw. That's another topic we'll get into later.
Getting raw. Okay. So, how to start conversations when becoming sexually active. So in order to have these conversations, we had to be educated on it first, of course. How we were educated was through Front 30X Community Project, aka FCP. If you don't know what FCP is, it's a youth-led organization that educates younger generations like us on topics such as reproductive justice, bodily autonomy, sex education, and using contraceptives, and like why it's important to be safe having casual sex. And
How'd you just throw the word casual in there?
casual sex.
You're so good for that.
Anyways, so that's how we learned about today's topic, which is, how to talk to somebody when you want to start getting freaky.
Real.
First things first, I think we can relate it to ourselves, because as a younger generation, this is usually the age group where all of us start becoming sexually active, and if not doing some type of physical activity with a trusted partner or whatever. So for starters, as younger generations, we have not had the best experience with attempting to become sexually active.
You right.
And for the most part, I think we could blame that. Well, not blame, but, focus that on the fact that older generations are really closed off when it comes to younger generations becoming sexually active.
Yeah, they need to take accountability for
So, the biggest issue is the stigma, because I know I've had a lot of negative input when I've talked about becoming active with my partners. I don't know about you though.
To your family or
Yeah.
What?
Because there's that stigma,
There's that stigma.
We need to talk about it.
You tried talking to them about it?
Well, yes, but it's usually you ask questions to older generations.
Oh my god,
then,
what happened?
And then they close you off. I know personally, I've been told by multiple older generations how bad it is to be sexually active. Because they tell
What did they say?
Well, they give you this impression that you're gonna get it, it's a bad thing, you're basically getting in trouble for having no sex. Exactly, sex equals no happiness, And I think that type of output that older generations have on younger generations not only kind of closes them off, but it's also they don't feel comfortable or in a safe space to seek confidence in adults for help, right? With education.
I thought you were gonna say seek therapy. They should seek therapy.
They should seek therapy, but
they need help.
But yeah, it's just a harmful environment to put your kids in, and I think a lot of the things that older adults don't acknowledge is how the disadvantage you're putting your kid at by just restricting them from not being educated.
It's a dangerous thing, and they don't even realize it. Because they're not they're purposely closing off this really important conversation but it's ultimately like it's gonna have the exact opposite effect of what they want it to have. Like no, it's like we're just gonna end up going and finding it somewhere else in a completely like wrong way.
Yeah, like going to like outside sources, and a lot of the time like said outside sources we find are like at a really young age. So like we're exposed to like stuff like porn at like 10, 11.
Porn is a problem.
And that's like a whole other conversation. That is a whole other conversation.
That's a whole other podcast.
But you know what I mean? Like, and I think we can all like agree and say like porn is such an unrealistic expectation on like what sex is. And there's like so many misconceptions that happen in these adult videos.
Yeah. I can't read, bro. Oh my god. It's potentially dangerous and say because it's like, okay, so you go to your parents like, I think I want to start or might start having like sex with somebody, or like I'm curious about that, to starting that journey or whatever, or that and they're just like, well, no, you shouldn't be even thinking about that in the first place. What do you mean? Like, I'm 16 years old. It's the only thing I think about, if anything. Like, okay. I mean, and it's like,
Be
okay,
real.
Be real.
Be real. Hashtag be real.
So, like, I don't know what they like, okay, sorry for asking. I'll come back in like 10 years when I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna say that.
But like, would you say like it's a negative effect?
Well,
on you?
because then they go off with the same exact questions, but they're searching for it like somewhere else completely. Like, we're gonna get the wrong answer, but they're gonna have this interpretation of what it is and should be, and it's just like completely the wrong thing. Like pornography sets a certain expectation, and it's completely unrealistic and dangerous.
Exactly, because like they don't even
Like the categories, bro.
It's such a degrading and objectifying thing, specifically to women, and it's like the type of bad impersonation that'll like give you as a young person, especially like a young individual, like a little kid. You're basically like a baby watching it, you know, and it's like you shouldn't be watching something like that, especially when it's not educating, because that's what. It's not when like kids go to older adults to ask for help. It's not because they're saying like they want to do all these nasty things. They just want to know so that they can have safe sex.
Yeah.
And like, what happens when you have a lack of education towards safe sex, or just sex education in general?
Bad things happen.
Like what?
Oh, my bad. Like disease and like teen pregnancy, unwanted teen pregnancy. And like getting yourself in certain situations where you definitely don't want to be in because you're still looking for these answers.
Lack of contraceptives, lack of education, lack of talking about consent, and that can like lead into so many things. Like I know personally, I had somebody really dear to me who was taken advantage of at such a young age because she was exposed in a wrong manner to like sex and whatnot, you know what I mean? And that's why I'm saying the more you close your children off from being educated on these type of topics, the more harm it'll lead to you and them. Which is why it's like, just create a safe environment to talk about it. There should be no shame on both parties at that.
That makes me kind of curious. Like, did our parents essentially find out about sex in their own way as well? Like they asked their parents did the exact same thing, and they just like, if that was the case, why would they turn around and do the exact same thing to us if they know what they experienced because of that?
Well, here's the thing though, like it's a generational pattern, right?
Oh, that's
and
gross.
Like that's why these type of things always happen, and I guess that's why we could say like so many of our parents had children at such a young age, because you know it was like they were put into this misconception that it was like have sex, get pregnant, have the baby out of shame because you did a bad deed. And like that's the wrong impression, because it shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be like that type of idea that you're getting punished for doing something which isn't even bad at that. There's nothing wrong with having
There's
sex,
nothing wrong
right?
with wanting pleasure.
But it's because it's like all these outdated, like older generations like feeding this to your parents, feeding this to you. And that's why it's such a like scary topic to talk about. And we can get into like how our parents, older generations, had these type of outdated religious ideals. And before I get into this, I'm not saying that like practicing religion is a bad thing. I'm saying that using your religion to then benefit your biased ideals is harming your children. You know what I mean? Because I know, like, we could say like my grandparents and stuff, they have these like religious and like cultural ideologies that they push onto your parents that then push onto you. And while at first it seems like it's kind of like useful, it's not only subconsciously like hurting you both, but it's also kind of like messing with your relationship or like the dynamic you're forming with like sexual like journeys and whatnot, right? And I think like that's why it's such a bad thing to have those type of topics. On top of that, just like the shame that older generations push onto you.
Yeah. Like, I honestly, I think it's just a version of their own shame. They're just projecting their shame onto us about how they felt as kids when they came around.
You're like making such a good point right
well,
now.
yeah, like it's literally like you said, it's generational trauma, and they're projecting their generational trauma onto their kids, and then their kids onto their kids, and that's how the cycle keeps going. We're like, breaking the cycle right now, bro.
I'm like, oh my god, dude. I'm like, she said generational trauma. She said.
Well, yeah, that's essentially what's happening. And it's kind of sickening. It's basically
It's sickening.
It's sickening. Yeah,
it is sickening.
It's a problem.
So like you said, like the generational like patterns that usually my foot is stuck in the couch.
That's what, yes, and then they proceed to become flabbergasted when we end up breaking the generational trauma, and we're like, no, I want to have this conversation. We're gonna have this conversation.
And
maybe I can
like,
educate you too on it. And they're like.
On top of that, like I previously mentioned, like they put this whole different ideal into your head on what sex is because of like the generational trauma that they went through. Because it's like, don't have sex. Oh, you're having sex?
You're gross.
You're gross. You're gonna get pregnant. You're going to hell. You're gonna catch like diseases. And it's like all of that could so easily be avoided if not only you were willingly to like allowed to educate your child on how to have safe sex, but also just have conversations with them where they feel comfortable enough to confide in you when they like have questions about this type of stuff.
Yeah.
Because it shouldn't be like an issue to ask.
I feel like by us asking, and if they were to be like, okay, let me educate you on this topic, I feel like they would interpret it as, I feel like I'm letting my child, like I feel like I'm promoting sex to my child and allowing them to go off and giving them the advice they need to go off and do these things, when that's really not the case. And we really just want to, like, when the time comes, because we are approaching that time, if they're not already there, like they want to know what to do, they want to be prepared, and then the parent is just like completely closed off, and it's like, no.
I feel like it's this reverse psychology type of thing where it's like, say, like if I bust out this analogy, say like you like tell your baby, like your child, like a little child, right, don't eat this candy, but they're gonna eat it because you told them not to. And it's like the same example. If you tell your kid not to do something, don't have sex,
it just makes them all the more curious about having sex.
Which is why like it shouldn't be an issue to like be curious, you know what I mean?
Yes, I know what you mean.
I'm like trying to read the topics right now and I cannot read them.
On the camera. Okay. You're so real for that.
So I think another thing we can talk about is like I said, being curious about sex. Because like Liv said, if you tell your child to completely avoid something, it's just gonna make them all the more curious. And what like older generations need to start recognizing is like curiosity isn't always like a bad thing, you know? But I feel like a lot of that also stems from, like I said, like older generations having this certain ideals and these type of like conservative beliefs that like kind of stem from like the unhealthy cultural impact that they've all like progressed onto one another. Because I know like personally, like coming from like a Hispanic oriented like generation, a lot of the times they have the really conservative and like closed off ideal that it's either you have sex and like step into motherhood and like become like part of the family, or like you're just a saint and like you are really religiously oriented and you respect God, so therefore you're not going to have sex, because if you do, then like you're going to hell, you know? And I think that type of ideal is just really harmful, especially due to the fact that like us, like younger generations, we're like in a whole different like mindset, you know? We're like completely, like we've like strayed past that, you know? We've strayed past it. We've formed our own opinions and whatnot, and I just think like that's why we all tend to clash with older generations, if that makes sense.
With the older generations, we're breaking the cycle that they've had for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Literally can go back to like pilgrims. They've had this ideology.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when time for us, when we bring up the conversation and they like shoo us away and we're like, no, you're like, oh, you're gonna tell me about it. Like we don't shy away like they expect us to. And they're just like, oh, what do I do now?
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of freaks them out, and so it just makes them even more like restricting of that topic, and that all of it together.
And I'm like, and. That's what I'm saying. But I think we can also like come from like a whole new perspective and say maybe a lot of the reasons why our parents don't like to educate us is because they like aren't educated themselves.
That's exactly, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Because I mean, I'm sure they kind of followed our same path, you know. Their parents told them no, they still did it. You know, 15 years later, they have a whole family. You know what I mean? And it's
they resent their family.
They're active, but like, they aren't educated.
They aren't actively educated.
They aren't actively educated. That's like really true though.
Yeah. I know a huge thing, like especially with our parents' generation, like consent is like, what is that to them? It's just like you're being a wuss, like you didn't get assaulted. What is that? Like guys will be guys. Like what? Like what?
That's
Like okay, like they think it's okay. Like it's baffling to be honest. Like how the older generations are just like, no, that's not real. Like assault isn't a thing. Like just like you're supposed to give guys what they want.
And that's what I'm saying. Like those type of outdated mentalities are just like so harmful, because it's like that's why you should be having conversations with your kids. You know what I mean? If there's one thing I've like learned over the years, I know I'm not old, right? But I think I'm pretty old for my age, for like the life I've lived. And if there's one thing I've learned is like knowledge is like, I don't mean to
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power. Like, knowledge is power, bro. I think
bro.
the sooner older generations learn to like reject their old ways, I feel like the sooner they learn.
Repent.
Yes.
Essentially.
I think the sooner they accept the idea of like learning, because that's the thing though, you like never stop learning. You never stop learning. You're always gonna learn something new. I think the sooner they kind of accept that fact will not only become beneficial to them, but their like relationship they form with their kids and like their kids and their kids and so forth, you know? Which then breaks the cycle.
That's a good point. Me personally.
So the producer has a question.
Producer has a question.
The question is, how do you navigate getting sex education when you're queer?
And we can
Dude,
we can have a whole other
Are you
episode.
queer?
I'm queer, personally, yes.
Okay, so then we have someone who's like, let me tell you.
So, especially not only like being queer myself, but also growing up around a lot of closeted queer folk. A lot of the
Ooh.
time.
Like your friends or like
Yeah,
family members? Not like
because-
who, not don't like name drop, but like
Okay, so basically, I went to an all-girls school growing up, right? And I
I'm like
think
no wonder.
get out.
Get out.
I think that's like the perfect opportunity where like younger like girls or like feminine individuals start to learn about their identity and their sexuality and whatnot. And a lot of the times they are not only raised in like especially really strict and traditional households, but they're also like lacking resources on just like all type of sex education, right?
Very much.
And not only is that dangerous, but it's also like super like harmful to them and how they grow, because like I said, you start to like do your own research, and sometimes it's like
Dude, low-key.
uneducating.
Like
So-
Jules in Euphoria.
Yeah, so if there's something I could like give advice to for like queer communities and like any type of space, is to like search, like seek local communities
Yeah,
that
find
have
community, most definitely.
yeah, that like have these type of conversations, because like the sooner you can find an environment where you all like relate to one another, the sooner you can kind of all navigate this journey together, because that's what it is, you know? It's
That's what this internship program is.
yeah, because it's like, I know that's what it was for me. I remember like first joining this internship having no type of resourceful knowledge on like any of the topics we were educated on, and it's like finding a community like this not only allowed me to feel more comfortable with my identity and like experimenting with future like topics such as like sex education and even like queer sex, you know, but it also felt like a safe space to talk about who I was and who I wanted to be as an individual. It made me feel
Yeah.
safe to ask questions as a
Yeah.
queer person.
Like there was never a ridiculous or stupid question. Like it was like, if we do ask, like the questions do go to your parents too. It's like, if we ask a question here, we're gonna get an answer in detail.
Mm-hmm.
I just found this to be really helpful.
And that's why I say, especially for like queer communities, is like it's scary, but I promise you, like once you find your people, it's like a whole other ball game, because you know you all are having these like similar like questions and these fears, and it's just such a welcoming community, because you realize you're not alone.
Yeah.
Like that's the last thing you're gonna be, is alone, because
Yeah, that's the
you're
last
not,
thing I
you're not
feel.
the only person who's struggling with these type of issues, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's why you all get to like come together and like help each other learn.
Yeah, although I don't relate to like you and everybody else in the program, I do feel like I'm within community, even though I'm probably one of like the only straight people. Who else is straight? Is it Victoria? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I'm like one of the only actually straight, like has one preference person.
Heterosexual.
Yeah, like raging heterosexual.
Raging heterosexual.
And I still feel like comfortable, and I still feel like I'm in community, and I still am comfortable enough asking these questions. And nobody's like, no, it's our time to shine. Like, no, it's all very equal and within each other.
I think once you find a like community where you feel comfortable enough to like ask these questions, it's like there's no power imbalance, because at the end of the day, like you all are like little babies, you know?
Second producer question. What's it been like learning about sex education in this program and talking to friends or your partners about what you've learned, putting to practice on what you've learned?
It's so fun. Like my friends will have questions because they know like what I do. They don't know what I do here specifically, because we do so many different things. I can't ever specify just like, oh, we do this one thing, whatever, because we're always doing something different.
Yeah.
So, but anytime they do have like a question regarding sexual health or like sexual education, or even with like same-sex partners, like friends who I know have same-sex partners and are in same-sex relationships, like they feel comfortable coming to me, the raging heterosexual, about their questions, because they know like their parents, literally all of their parents are like, they don't want to hear about it. They're kind of okay with it, but they don't want to hear about it. They don't want to see it for the most part. And like I get to educate them, semi-educate them, because I'm not like
Super like experience.
yeah, like I, especially with those like the same-sex couples, I'm just like, well, I'm not gonna pretend to know everything about your guys' dynamic and relationship and like sexual health and well-being, but I can I can give you what I know, and they make something like so you know how we learned so you know how we learned about like dental dams. First of all, I thought they were bringing stuff in for our teeth. Dental dams.
Bye.
Bye. And like they were like, well, my partner like has cut their nails, but when they like but when they finger me, like I still get like little cuts inside. I'm like, well, yeah, little cuts are gonna happen. Like we have nails. You can file them. Like we have nails. They're still. So I was like, I literally suggested it to them. I was like, well, there's these things called dental dams that you guys can use for fingering, and it's like you're probably not gonna get cuts anymore. Like far less chance that you're gonna get like UTIs or infections of any kind. So they I remember we got some at the queer sex ed lesson. So I was like, okay, let me bring you guys some. I got you. So I brought them some, and then like a few weeks later, they were like, bro, you're sex god. And I'm like, I'm really not. I just like, this is basic information that y'all need.
To that, because when I first started this internship,
it's just so fun watching them like
I was like
reciprocate information.
Yeah, because like I was actually having this conversation with one of our producers today. But
who is she?
I'm like, who is she? But I was actually having one of the conversations with them, and comparison, because this is a year-long internship that we've been a part of. It didn't feel like a long time, but like so much can happen in a year. So much has happened in a year. Dude. And like when I say I'm not who I was a year ago,
Definitely.
and that sounds so stupid. I'm not who I was a year ago.
True.
But it's like, you know.
Yeah.
Before I was lacking education on all types of topics,
Yeah.
like racial oppression within like gender inequality, especially with like women's rights and their reproductive organs, and even like safe sex and like contraceptives. You know, there are so many things that like I've valuably learned and like applied to my own life. For example, like communication.
Oh my god.
None of my relationships would have worked out if I didn't learn about communication.
Yeah.
I would be
That's specific. I know what lesson you're talking about, dude. It was such a game changer.
It was
Yeah.
because it's like when you have these type of conversations like with your partner, it's a whole other ballgame.
Yeah, and I think communication is a huge thing that does not get taught. And like the way we learn communication is through seeing our parents' dynamics with each other, and like usually it's
Which
like,
were unhealthy, might I add.
yeah,
Unhealthy.
again with the generational trauma, but it's usually like
Throw it in the trash. 2023, no more. Break the cycle.
they broke them up.
What lesson are you talking about?
We're talking about.
It was like oh my god, it was like what happened, but like what was your original intent, and like when the partner is explaining, oh, that wasn't my intent, but I
So,
understand like
yeah.
how you interpreted it. Like it was crazy.
Basically, what Liv was trying to say
It
was
allowed you to see
was
both
our-
sides of the story.
It was our popular queer sex education lesson. We did a little activity which was role playing, and it was communicating.
What?
Yes, it was role playing. Remember? You don't remember?
That's not the one I was talking about.
What was the one?
It was the one where the one person from West Fund came and they
It was our conflict and
Yeah.
resolution
Yeah.
thing.
It was that one.
Which is funny, sorry producer talking, which is funny that a workshop on conflict was the most helpful on y'all's skill building for communication.
It was.
It
I will
was.
say because
Yeah.
had I not like. Well, first of all, they like enlightened us on like what conflict was. When you define what conflict is, which by the way isn't
It
good
gives
or
it
bad,
a
but
whole
it's
new meaning.
neutral. Yeah, it gives you a whole
You
new like
see it
output.
in a very new light. Like conflict isn't just bad. It's just
Yeah.
not just one thing.
Because you're not fighting anymore.
Yeah, it's not
You just
black
had a
and white.
conflict. And like that's not bad. It's not good either. You can take from it, you know? It's a very neutral thing, and like
She's mid. Conflict is mid.
it's half a glass. But like the sooner you like kind of open yourself up to that like ideal, the easier you can accept communicating with one another. Because at that point, it's not like you're not trying to fight. You're just trying to like compromise and get past the argument.
Yeah.
So producer has another question.
Producer has a lot of questions.
The last question.
I love
So
you, producer.
thank you.
This
This year we got to go to Let's Talk About Sex, a conference on sex education hosted by Sister Song. What was that like? In addition, what did it feel like to have your autonomy respected in the program compared to in school or with other relationships?
That was a really good question.
It's a long one.
I'll put that in the middle.
I'm like, reading it. I'm like,
Look at it's like reading the Elder Scrolls. There's
the producer was right. This year, as a cohort, we were given the opportunity, fun-free, by might I add, to...
Oh, wait, what?
It was free.
Oh, I thought you said fun-free. I was like, down
Fund.
below, we had so much fun.
Fund.
Fund.
Oh my god, fun-free. So basically, all expenses covered. We got the opportunity to go out of town to Dallas to attend, like they mentioned, a Sister Songs conference, which was Let's Talk About Sex. So what did we do there?
We woke up every day like at 7. We went to workshops for the majority of the day.
Mhm.
And it was not all the workshops were completely different, and we had the autonomy to go and choose the workshops we wanted to. So I know some of us went to ones about why there was a vulva one,
Yeah.
You went to that one.
Vaginal. It was
Yeah.
it was talking about vaginal pain and
Yeah.
I don't want to say disease, but vulvanic pain that most women or people with female genitals experience, and it just educated you on a lot of different topics that were related to your genitals, so we got to go to the conference. We got to meet a lot of people. It was hosted by Sister Song. Sister Song is who fund West Fund, and West Fund is who founded. No, that's
You're
not
wrong.
it.
Sister Song founded Reproductive Justice.
Sister Song founded.
Oh my
They
God.
hosted.
You were halfway there.
They hosted
I
Let's
wasn't
Talk About
recording.
Sex, but they don't directly fund us.
They don't direct. West Fund funds us.
Yes.
West Fund funds us. I'm so sorry. It's been a year and I still get it wrong. It's been a year, Daddy.
Oh my God.
Basically, we're in cahoots with Sister Song.
Cahoots.
We're in cahoots with Sister Song. So it was nice
Be so
being in an environment like that, because I will say
You could feel the energy.
you could feel
You could feel the positive energy.
Before I get into that though, all of these people, they were all older than us
Cahoots.
significantly. We were the only minors there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But there was
Basically.
like Liv mentioned earlier, there was just it was a community where equality was kind of just distributed everywhere.
Yeah.
There was no imbalance. Everybody was respected, especially us. They treated us like any other individual.
Yeah,
We
it was
deserved to be
crazy.
there.
We got a lot of us got approached by people 20 years older than ourselves, and they were like, "Oh, where are you guys from? What do you do?" Or all this stuff. I was like, "Oh
And
my God,
to be able to talk to people.
it's refreshing." Not being talk to you're a little kid, and they
Uh-huh.
actually talk to you like you're a human.
That mutual respect, I think, is really important, especially with us at younger age groups, because I feel a lot of the times when we talk to older people about these type of topics, they kind of downplay our knowledge and the education that we've had and experienced, because they think we're still young, so we lack experience. But when you go to a conference like this, it's kind of such a liberating emotional feeling, because
Yeah.
you're kind of navigating this type of scenario by yourself, and I think that's something not a lot of teenagers get to do, which is why it was just so emotionally impactful, because it felt for once you were being listened to.
Yeah.
You weren't being treated like a little kid. You were being treated like an individual with ideals and opinions that were just as valid as anyone else's, and along with that, you were being educated on other individuals' opinions and ideals, which is why it was just so significant to me.
Yeah, the whole thing was just immensely deep and emotionally impactful in so many ways. I remember a workshop I went to, Corinthia came into my room. Producer came into my room.
Producer!
Who is she?
Who is she?
Producer came into my room after the day of workshops was done, and I just went off on this tangent about this workshop I went to, I learned this and that, and all dude, because that was honestly one of the most impactful workshops or any type of lecture I've ever listened to my whole life. nurturing your consciousness through sex ed, and it was, oh my god, I was shook, dude. Let me tell you, I was shook. It was first of all, the person hosting the workshop was made, even though it was virtual, like they made it so immensely like comfortable. They started talking like they weren't talking like they're trying to be professional. They was just like they're just a person who wants to talk about this subject and wants to educate. And it was amazing. Oh my god. Like I learned so much about emotional connections with your partner, about how the sexual education system is rooted in white supremacy. And don't ask me to get into that, because let me tell you, that guy, I can only hit like certain points, and there are not a lot of points.
Wait, could you like go into like the emotional connection with your partner?
Yeah, so essentially they talked they talked about how sex is not just supposed to be like, oh yeah, like you're getting physical with someone, that's it. Like no, there's so much emotion rooted into it that like people cannot grasp it most of the time. Like okay, like there's aftercare. Not a lot of people do that, and it can be immensely crushing to one's partner. Like they don't even realize it, because like again, they're not.
Oh, the ambulance.
Who is she?
Are you done?
Are you done?
Go on.
And okay, so yeah, emotions play a huge part in sex and sexual relationships, because it's just like you're trusting someone with your body, and you're trusting someone. Like it's just that's the furthest you can be with someone physically. And you need to have a certain type of emotional understanding of that other person, and especially of yourself. You need to understand what it is you want from this person. Can you, like, how well do you know this person? Like, how well do you know yourself around this person? Like, do you like trust and all this other stuff? Me personally, dude, it was just like there was so much. Like I can't even. The summarization is just like so ass. There was a lot, and I was like, oh, yeah, it's just, yeah.
What about the second part to that question about autonomy?
What do you feel like to have your anatomy respected?
Anatomy.
Oh, well, autonomy and anatomy, same thing, no?
No.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. Autonomy respected compared to. So, I think I keep bringing up this point, but it's just so true. You know, as teenagers, especially like, because you're not an adult yet, right? You're still surrounded by so many adults who have this type of like age mentality that like they're better than you because they're older, right? A lot of the times they don't listen or acknowledge your problems and the way you feel. And like I mentioned earlier, we were surrounded by a bunch of older age groups, but that was like not the scenario at all, because it was like fair game to have conversations with one another, and they didn't treat us any less, they didn't treat us any more. They just treated us like we should be respected because we are here.
Yeah.
And I think that's something not a lot of us get to experience in like school and like just work environments in general, because I feel like a lot of the generations that we're surrounded by, especially in our city, comparison to like Dallas and the conference and whatnot, a lot of them are very conservative, right? So obviously they're gonna behave in a different manner. Whereas when you go to like a conference like this that are openly talking about like sex education and like pleasure and how to seek like help with your, you know, bodily, you know, with like your body, I think it's a lot different, because these people are educated, and the people that we have conflict with on a day-to-day basis aren't so much educated, which is why they're so closed off with having these type of conversations with you, which is why they shut you out in the first place, you know? So
with school, it's like compared, like your autonomy being respected, like in a setting like in Dallas, the conference in Dallas, compared to like school, it's so like with school it's so black and white. It's like, no, you're here for one thing, you're not gonna ask a question that strays from another thing, like from the subject, even if it's something you're genuinely interested about. Like, no, because we're learning about this, we'll get to your question later. They never do. But it's like, if we were to ask that question in Dallas or like in a community like that conference, it's like, I'm open to hear your conversation. Just let me finish my thought first, and I'll get like we'll have that conversation, and we'll learn together. And whereas school, it's not at all like that. It's like, no, has nothing to do with what's going on. Hello?
That's how they treat us.
Okay. I was like, okay.
But yeah, I think that was a really good point you made. They'll finish their conversation, and then you two get to learn about it together. Which is something you don't really get to experience, is learn together.
Oh, me. Oh my god, what did you learn like with your vulva workshop?
Well, when I was at the Volvo workshop, the hosts, they were mostly talking about like how they experience like vaginal pain, especially with like penetration. And along with that, they went into this really good point, which was how they went to multiple gynecologists, and none of them were able to like diagnose what was wrong with them, because a lot of these doctors were not only inexperienced but uneducated on like women's vaginas. And I think that's like a conversation that we need to talk about, because that's one thing you don't get taught growing up, is how to take care of your vagina.
Oh, very much. Because it's like, if I want to talk about like, hey mom, hey dad, like why is my vagina doing this? Why am I experiencing like these sensations? Or like, does it smell like this? Why am I discharging?
Yeah.
Like, they don't even, a lot of people don't, like our age, and even adults don't know what discharge is. Like, it's kind of scary. They think it's like weird if someone has discharge, and it's like, girl, if you're not having discharge, you probably need to go get that checked out, because that's literally our vagina's form of like cleansing itself.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing too, is like to not be educated on like a part of like a body part on yourself. It's kind of scary, because you wouldn't overlook something like your lungs or your kidney, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, why should you overlook like your vagina and how to take care of it? Because that's like,
it's an open organ. First of all,
it is an open organ, and that's what I'm saying, because not a lot of people, or just like women or people with like female genitals, talk about this, right? Because it's not only lack of education, but it's just like lack of knowledge over it. And that's why I think like people need to talk about it more, because it's like, that is a part of your body. You should know how to take care of a part of your body.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be like a bad thing to ask about it.
Yeah.
Which is why, like, that's why I always say it's okay to be curious. Which kind of like sums up.
It's better to be curious.
Yeah, this kind of like sums up what I've been meaning to say this entire time. It's okay to be curious. Ask questions. You know what I mean? Because like Liv said, you get to learn together. And it's like, I would rather go blind into like a community and learn.
What you mean go blind?
I would rather be lost with a community to learn together, rather than having to figure this out on my own. Because
because it makes you feel less alone in the education process, and it's less scary to approach it.
Like
the subject, yes.
Yeah. Which is why it's like, don't be scared to ask questions. Ask questions.
Yeah, if anything, it does way more harm than good when you decide to not ask a question because you think it's too embarrassing or too gross or too personal. Like, no, you need to ask this question. Like, in a community where you feel you can openly ask questions regarding like anything, like your own personal like hygienic health, like your health, like regarding your vagina or like any other type of genitals, or like even sex in itself, like just things like that. People just want to shy away from it because that's what we've been taught, and it just really just does more harm than good, because it's like, oh, let me Google this. Like, okay, Google like, yeah, Google can only go so far. It only tells you so much, and it's like there's so many different ways kids our age can interpret what Google tells us.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's normal to not know. It's normal to be curious.
And it's normal to ask.
It's normal to ask questions, which is why, don't be scared, because I guarantee you, the question you're asking is a question that like 15 other kids don't know about, you know? And that's why I mentioned earlier, it's important to seek communities that talk about these type of issues,
Definitely.
in regards to like your health and your like autonomy,
Definitely.
right? And at the end of the day, that's kind of like, I guess, what we could say FCP was for us, because it
Yeah.
was this whole new opportunity to be surrounded by individuals who not only respected your boundaries and who you were as an individual, but also like what you needed to know and what you wanted to know, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it's okay to be scared, but you know, you like lose the chances you never take up on, right? Which is why it's always so important to like put yourself out there, because the second you do, I guarantee you, you'll be welcomed with open arms, especially in a community who
With the
wants
right
to-
community.
Yeah, and that's why that's why we encourage you to seek communities, right? Like
Seek
SCP.
them.
Speak to be spoke, but
So
you know,
what?
I'm like getting tired.
Okay, Kanye West.
Seek communities, ask questions, don't be afraid to educate yourself. Learn. And with that being said,
Learn.
with that being said, that's gonna be the end of today's episode on Kissing Strangers. It
Don't
was-
kiss strangers unless you like. If, before you kiss strangers,
Ask
ask
to-
for a background. Ask for a
ask-
health background at least.
Ask to kiss the
Where you
stranger.
been? Who you been with? What you doing? Who you doing?
We're gonna redo. I'm cutting that part out.
No, you're not. That's
Okay.
such good information. Kissing strangers thing was a metaphor.
Yeah, that's gonna be all for today's episode. We would like to say keep in touch. No,
I don't even know where this is going.
I'm trying to like close it up. Make sure to keep an eye out for the next episode. I know we have our other friends in FCP who are gonna be releasing their own episodes
Yes.
soon. So
And there's-
watch out for that.
So after that really dramatic cutoff, basically we were just saying to stay tuned for the next episode that our friends in FCP are also releasing on Kissing Strangers. I'm pretty sure they go over like bodily autonomy and whatever. But yeah, that's enough for today's episode. We hope you guys enjoyed watching as much as we enjoyed recording. And for a brief little sponsor vid, the following vid is gonna be about our sponsors for the video. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Bye.
This season was sponsored by Jane's Due Process, who provide informational resources for young people who are pregnant.
This would include birth control information and repro kits, along with so much more. I would like to do a special shout out to Jane's Due Process for sponsoring and also funding the internship, so they would allow us to participate in the podcast.
Yeah, thank you to JDP.